Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice launched in 2017 on the PlayStation 4. The game is pretty divided on whether it's good or not, boring or not, or a movie or not. The game from Ninja Theory sees Senua venturing into hell after the death of her boyfriend, seemingly caused by the voices in her head. The game was a spectacle in graphics and sound design when it launched, and still holds up those ways 7 years later. But is it any good? Let's take a look. So leave a like and a sub, and let's go. The game starts with Senua on a boat approaching the shore. You can start playing as soon as she gets off. Whoa, she also has a head dangling from her hip, which we later find out is the head of her boyfriend Dillion. He's dead. The game is most known for its representation of psychosis, and her form of psychosis has constant voices in her head. The voices either doubt, mock, belittle, or even cheer for Senua, depending on the situation.
Her torch is going out. No, it's not. It's going to run out soon. She hasn't got much time.
This also means the best way to play the game is with headphones, which makes it ASMR the game, I guess.
Do you have any reflexes at all?
Senua is on her way to Helheim to find the soul of her dead lover Dillion. She's hoping his head will help her, I think. Anyways, you find the gates of Helheim, but the only way to get in is to defeat Valravn, the god of ravens, and the fire giant, god of fire. Yeah, I know, you never would have guessed. After killing them, Hela breaks your sword and your ankles.
Oh, no.
This brings you to the Great Deku Tree, where you must complete 3 shrines to be able to equip the Master Sword. We learned that during these trials that Senua's mother also had psychosis, and was promptly burned at the stake by her dad. Senua's father was abusive to her once he found out she had the same mental illness as her mother. Side note, we hear a deep male voice throughout the game in her head, a male voice only ever called the Darkness. It's understood that the Darkness is a representation of her father that haunts her.
Oh, come here, Cody. You deserve it.
I hope you fucking die.
One day on a nice walk, she came across a nice young man named Dillion. He saw the way she swung her sword and said, "Hey, could you come and swing my sword?" They hit it off and she left home to live with him, since he saw her as misunderstood and not some sort of curse like her father did.
Say it again, Dexter.
A plague came through and killed many in their village, but Senua thought this was due to her psychosis, so she left in exile. Once returning, she realized the entire village was burned to the ground, and the Norsemen had sacrificed Dillion to the Norse gods. Pretty sure they'd be happy with just some mead.
I have meat.
She promises to save her lover's soul from the depths of Helheim, and this is where we find her at the start of the game. After wielding the Hellblade, she's able to enter Hell, but must defeat Garm first, the dog that guards its gates. After putting down the pup, she is able to confront Hela. Senua mows down an army of undead but eventually kills Hela, and comes to terms with Dillion's death. She embraces the voices in her head and puts the past behind her. Game done. No Arbiter or Flood in sight.
There will be no more stories after this one.
So that was a fucking lie.
The gameplay part of the game is what has people divided. As you can tell by the length of the story section, the game is pretty short. I think the story is great, it gets to the point and unravels at a good pace while you understand it, but it is short. It's about 6 hours on average, maybe a little more if you take your time to collect the Lorestones, which I'll circle back to. The gameplay mainly consists of walking, puzzles, and combat that feels like a puzzle. First, the combat. It's basic but passable. X and Y are light and heavy attacks. B is a kick for the shielded enemies. A is a dodge. Right bumper is a parry to parry. Left bumper is a run to run. And right trigger is focus, which can slow down combat, allowing you some free hits. Along with all of that, there's also a very harsh lock-on, but that's it. The basic enemies can be spammed down no problem, and if they block your hits and get a shot onto you, a simple parry, which has a very forgiving window by the way, will finish them off. Shielded enemies, yeah, the B is an easy fix for them, and those are like 80% of the bad guys. The others are shadowy jabronis, which you can't deal damage until you parry an attack or activate focus. Bosses and late game large enemies have a heavy hitting unparryable attack that'll flash like yellow or some shit on the build up, but that's basically it. My problem, aside from it being pretty stale, is that the game will throw a bunch of dudes at you at random spots in the battlefield, including right next to you. and I'm not joking. There are times where an enemy will fade in and immediately attack you before you can even see them. It's even worse if they first spawn as a shadow, because even after loading in they are still hard to see. Another thing is the damn invisible barriers. The game won't give you more than 3 enemies at a time to fight, but when they do, I think they create a little arena for you to fight in. I try rolling to give myself more space and I end up getting stuck on nothing and getting punished for it. The combat isn't great, but it's passable as a delivery device for the story. But there's an aspect of it that I enjoyed. You can cancel out of your attacks. Mid-swing, you can dash to cancel your attack, so you are never fully committed. I think the Souls games are the ones that made the contrary popular. Once you press that button, you have to see that attack to the end. But I like the ability to cancel it. It could have been something they implemented after QA testing, and I'm looking too deeply into it. The next aspect of the gameplay are the puzzles, and there is far more of it than combat. I do enjoy puzzle games maybe more than the next person, but this is kind of another miss. They mainly consist of going through archways to reveal differences in the environment, which breaks down to revealing pathways and bridges that weren't there before.
My vision is augmented.
I think this also plays into her psychosis, being that Senua sees things that aren't really there, and these archways unlock that. It's a neat concept, but it's overused and never really expanded on. Another one is finding runic patterns in your environment. Another psychosis-linked puzzle, but it's overused a bit more than the archways, and you're doing it the entire playthrough. They do mix it up a bit, where you are first lining up pillars and trees, and later on lining up shadows and environmental fragments. But it's overused nonetheless. Those two are the main ones, but there are also some others that the game dabbles with. The trials have one where you are in pitch blackness avoiding monsters, being led by Dillian's voice. This part was dope. It kind of gave us a window into how Ninja Theory might approach a horror game, and I was digging it. Don't breathe, eat your heart out. Another one of them is during the Fire Giant section. You find like a wicker barricade and need to find a way through. This being a symbol that after interacting with it, lights everything on fire, allowing you to break through. Another link to psychosis, since nothing is changed here and things aren't on fire, but it's just what she sees. I do like that some sections had unique puzzles and try to do something even a little different, but you just need to be more creative with it. Introduce an idea, get the player comfortable with it, and have some advanced puzzles, and then get out. I think this is a good time to talk about the Dark Rot. Early on in the game, we see that Senua's right hand is dark and rotting.
Give me your other hand!
Oh, my other hand isn't strong enough. You take my little hand.
No! Get it away from it!
The only in-game text we ever get is to tell us that if we die enough, the rot will spread. And if it gets to her head, then all progress will be deleted. We've seen other games do this before, but I'm kind of drawing a blank. The first thing that I think of is not really the same, but it's the Iron Skull from Halo, where if you die, you have to play the whole level again from the start. I feel like this can work, but in a game where the combat is sometimes bullshit and stacked against you, and with parts where you need to depend on Senua's agility, it doesn't work here. I've read articles that people played this game just anxious, thinking about the possibility of losing all of their progress. I never really worried about it, but Dark Rot just isn't a fun implementation. This is where I'd be interested to know what you think about it. Leave a comment down below if you agree or not. Also, please subscribe and like the video too. Thank you. Being a more cinematic, slow-paced experience, exploration is a big part of it. Senua has a pretty basic walking speed and can jog when holding down the left bumper. The graphics are great, like I said, so I sometimes found myself walking at some sections and just looking around, looking at the texture, details, foliage, reflections, and the areas in the distance. While looking around, I couldn't help but notice that some parts of the ground magically rise, popping into where they should be. Sometimes it's subtle, but I did get footage of some very obvious parts. I would categorize this as another psychosis thing, but when you back up, those parts sink back into the ground. So this clearly isn't supposed to happen. Moving on. The game is filled with Lorestones, and these stones basically give you surrounding lore on Norse mythology. Wait, what the hell did I do here? Of which is very... Oh, some. Where'd the rest of it go? Some of which is very useful information that supports the story, and others not so much. The ones that don't help the story, I believe, should be cut. If not for the only reason that there are too many. Some talk about the sword that she eventually gets and how it was used to kill Fafnir, or talking about the plague that came through, but others talk about Baldur and other characters that have nothing to do with Senua at all.
Death for Sigmund and his brothers seems certain. But the king's wife is Sigmund's sister.
The total number of them is 44. It could be cut down by 10 or maybe in half, and it would support the story and world a little bit better. Something I do like about the Lorestones is that the game keeps track of the ones that you have dynamically in-game. The runes form a circle around the outer edge, starting at 12 o'clock going clockwise. All the blue ones are the stones that you have found, and the red ones are the ones that you missed. They also aren't in set places. In certain areas, some of them could be swapped around for each other, which is something we don't see very often. The voice and motion capture performances all around were great. Melina Juergens kills it as Senua, and being her first big acting role makes it even more impressive. Senua is surrounded by these voices in her head, and I realize that they are not Melina. Melina will sometimes respond, but for the most part, she ignores them entirely.
She can't cross the bridge. It's broken.
She has to fix it.
It's too dangerous.
She's done it before. You have to fight on.
Be careful.
The final battle.
Get his soul back. It's the final task.
Yes, it is.
There are a couple other performances, mainly her parents, Dillian and Druth. Druth is only in the opening areas of the game, and it's heavily hinted that the fire giant killed him. And this brings me to live action. Where do I start? I don't find live action mixed into gameplay appealing at all. It never made sense to me to have real actors superimposed in the game world. I know Ninja Theory and Remedy specifically have a history of doing this. With Quantum Break, having a show that plays in between levels is not what I'm talking about. You may feel differently, but I've always found it incredibly distracting. Now, I know it may sound like I didn't like the game, but for what it's trying to do, I think it succeeds. Senua is an intriguing character with a gripping past faced with challenging circumstances. The story that the game tells is strong, and it's surrounded with decent yet repetitive puzzles and a combat system that plays it a little too safe, making for a solid cinematic experience that's still worth a playthrough. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe. Both are free and help the channel a lot. Thank you. I'm on Twitter at SilverJS and Instagram at JSSilver. 3s for the E's. I'll see you all in the next one. Stay safe.